Hi guys, I'm at my physical therapy session and luckily my PT is going to, behind me, is going to let me kind of demonstrate some of the exercises that we do. No,
I can't put it there.
So when we have our lecture about therapeutic exercise, we are going to think about exercises in terms of how strong is a person and if we can give them exercises to increase strength depending on their muscle grade. So we're going to give you some examples of exercises for isotonic resistive, isotonic active, active assisted, isometric exercises, and then talk about passive exercise and also show you just this idea of passive and active stretch.
We're going to work on passive exercise. Here's a really lovely example. So for the shoulder, of course, Dr. Taggart is going to put both arms, hold on, I got to figure out where I am, on the ball.
There you go.
Yep. And then you're just going to push the ball forward and let it come back. So most of the work is coming from the left arm, not the right arm, not the arm with the fancy elbow compression sleeve. Yep.
All right.
So that the right shoulder is moving passively based on the left arm's movement as well as the support of a mechanical device, otherwise known as
a therapy ball.
A therapy ball. Now we're going to look at a wonderful example of active stretch. Dr. Taggart is now seated and she is going to use pulleys, shoulder pulleys, famous. This is active because she is having to maintain a grasp of the handles or whatever they're called, right? And so that actually activates the shoulder. Even though this is very much passive work, there is an activation to it because of the grip. So she gets up there, holds it there for, thank you. You hold it there for, 5-10 seconds and slowly come down. The left arm, the one without the funky elbow compression sleeve, is doing most of the work. You could work on flexion, abduction, scaption with the elbow bent or straight. With the elbow bent, there can be a little bit more tolerance because the lever arm is shorter than if the elbow were extended. You can also do this work in internal rotation, which is one of the more unpleasant stretches for the shoulder using pulleys. This is a lovely example of active assisted exercise. And this particular machine will involve resistance. There's really no way to not have any resistance on this machine. This is an upper body ergonometer. And this is what I have patients do usually in the beginning of a session to help warm up their tissue. I'd be keeping my trunk still, my shoulders gently retracted, my shoulder blades retracted. And the idea is that you hold your trunk very still and keep moving the arms.
Hold the whole thing.
Huh?
From the whole thing.
Oh my God. There she is. She's sitting. She's happy.
There you go. Good, perfect.
Okay, well, hold on. You can. In many facilities, they have options for that machine to be in standing, which is even better than in sitting. You can go different directions. You can use different grips on it. You can add different resistance. You could talk about different speeds. And then if you did this exercise at the end of a session, it would work on more shoulder endurance than the beginning of the session for warming up the joints for further exercise and or manual work. All right, now we're going to do isotonic exercise, and this is a resistive exercise. I'm going to do manual resistance as a demonstration, and this is cool stuff. This is good stuff. This is cool. So I want to strengthen what is weak, and that is shoulder flexion. So I'm going to start at neutral position. And our goal is to go to the end range of motion. I like doing PNF myself, but I'll keep my PNF to myself.
Next semester we'll do PNF.
So now there's different resistance points manual contact points that you could think about when you apply manual resistance. The more distal you go with your resistance, it's going to be a lot harder. This is probably a little bit more advanced for somebody who's just learning. Ooh, you've got some swelling in there. Sorry, side note. When somebody is just figuring out maybe a little bit of resistance at more proximal, so it would be just below the joint that you're trying to apply resistance to. So just think about your manual contacts when you're applying resistance. So we're going to go just proximal to the elbow, and we're going to say, okay, lift your head. I want to take your arm. This is what the motion I want you to do is this. Go ahead and do that for me, and I'm going to apply some resistance. This is an isotonic concentric hold here contraction. Let's do that again. So we're going to start from neutral shoulder position. Go ahead and reach overhead. I'm applying manual resistance for a concentric contraction. All the way to the end range. Again, here we go. Ready? Lift. I apply that resistance. I want her to be successful, so I can't apply so much resistance. She's lifting off the table. Her eyes are popping out of her head. These are bad signs. If you feel the muscle is a little jerky, kind of tremulous or fluctuating, that's a good sign. It's strengthening. And as long as it doesn't cause pain, we don't want that. The nice thing is when you then roll from a concentric resistive move, you want to do an isometric at the very end of the range of motion where they're weak, because then this builds strength at the very end of the range. So go ahead and do that for me. Lift up. I'm resisting. I get to the end range of motion. Keep going. Flexing. Yeah, I think they can. Right? Here we are. This is about, let's say that this is about her limitation and flexion where she's comfortable. Now I'm going to say hold here, and I'm going to try to push her arm into extension. I'm asking for an isometric hold at the tolerated end range of motion to build strength at that end range where we're lacking movement. Good. Let's do that one more time. Go ahead, lift up. I'm applying my resistance. Now, end range, hold. And now I'm going to push the arm down as if I'm trying to push her back into where we started. Rest. Usually an isometric hold, I would do anywhere from about 5 to 10 seconds. You could change it, you could build it, back off a little bit if they start, showing signs that they're weakening. Use your judgment. Now, this is even more cool. A concentric to isometric to an eccentric resistance pattern. Whoa. Ready? Okay, go ahead and lift up. This is me resisting concentric motion. Hold here. This is an isometric hold. And now I'm going to say, let me push your arm down. So back off some of your resistance. So she is resisting. She's trying to flex as I'm pushing her down into extension. Come on up again. Ready? Concentric. Go. Concentric isotonic resistance. Hold. Isometric isotonic resistance. Let me push you down. Isotonic eccentric resistance. Hold on. Now, concentrically, and so isometric is, people are often very strong in a range of motion they're used to. In a range of motion we're trying to train, they may be weak there. A concentric contraction is going to usually be stronger than an eccentric contraction. Eccentric contractions are usually harder to do. They're more advanced, but they're perfect for building strength. When somebody can demonstrate that they can tolerate resistive eccentric load, it's beautiful. And why is eccentric important? We reverse motion all the time. So if I lift my arm up, I don't just let it drop down. I have to control it on the way down, and that is an eccentric control. This is critical with rotator cuff issues, you may have rotator cuff neuromuscular lack of control, not only coming concentrically, but also eccentrically. That rotator cuff might not fire correctly. You could have scapulohumeral rhythmic issues, not just in concentric movement, but also in eccentric control. So eccentric training is critical. Here is an example, a wonderful example of an isometric exercise specifically for rotator cuff stabilization. So Dr. Taggart is standing in a doorway.
Go that way.
I'm coming.
There you go,
There, okay. And her elbow is at 90 degrees. Her shoulder is neutral, right? And there is a towel between her hand and the door frame, and she's in a fist. So she's going to apply a little gentle pressure. Just hold it there against the towel. So we're activating anterior delt. Mm-hmm. And you hold for about 3 to 5 seconds. And then I'm working on it, I know. And then relax. And then you could do internal and external rotation as well as extension in the same format of this isometric. Nope. External rotation, you put the towel on the opposite side of the door, back of the hand there. Make sure the shoulder is in neutral. Pretend that you've got a newspaper in between your upper arm and your trunk. Then you don't want me to grab the newspaper. And then you apply an isometric force in an external rotation direction. And with the cool thing being, that elbow is still 90 degrees and now it's perpendicular to her trunk. So this is a wonderful way to do isometrics with the shoulder joint being perfectly neutral. She's not rotated in one direction or another. It's neutral rotation. It's also neutral in a plane of movement of either flexion or extension. And she just got herself into internal rotation. So that would be an internal rotation isometric press. Let me see if I can show from here.
See my muscles?
All those muscles from pickleball. Okay, and then extension. You would turn around and let me get on the other side. Sorry, guys. Put the towel. You don't necessarily have to have a towel. Turn around.
Okay. Oh, here.
And keep going back until your arm is against the, yep. Elbow flexed at 90. You don't have to have the elbow flexed at 90, but it works. But this has to be against the door frame. There you go. And then, sorry guys. And then she's going to do extension of the shoulder. But again, you don't actually move through a range of motion into extension. This is great when you have somebody, say, with a rotator cuff repair, and they are able to transition from all passive work to active, when they start transitioning into being able to do active range of motion. This is great preparatory work for that. Hey guys, we're going to learn passive stretch. So this is a great technique in order to increase range of motion that is lacking. So either lacking actively or passively. And we're going to work on the shoulder. The motion I'm after right now is elevation. So that would involve flexion, scaption, or abduction. I'm going to work more in a flexion to scaption plane. That's a lot more comfortable and more tolerable than abduction and passive stretch. Doesn't mean that you don't ever go there, but just an FYI. So when I take the patient's arm, I'm going to support it between my body and my moving arm, the arm that I'm going to rely on the most for controlling the arm. This kind of gives a little bit of a cradling effect. And then for me to be able to move the arm, now I'm just sort of weight shifting. And people will often feel, I think you should try this on each other. You know, you'll feel like, oh, okay, yeah, I can give into this a little bit more, understanding that this shoulder is probably painful. So that the more support they feel and the more rhythmic kind of rocking that you might try, they'll relax a little bit more easily into the rest of the stretch. So then let's say I'm going to start then relocating that arm on a different part of my trunk. I'm going to start pushing into the range, knowing that this is where we're hitting into that realm of, oh, okay, we're going close to the end range. So sometimes you're going to either feel it, that you have this tension. You might be able to go further, but if you pushed it, things would, you'd see guarding, or you would hear the patient complain. That's usually a good sign to stop. Or you would just see some muscles pop up that they're so tight that you know that, okay, this is where I need to stop and rest. If it's pain, then you would probably back off from that range and then kind of sit and simmer in this little position here. Maybe add some soft tissue work. I might add soft tissue on the pectoralis muscles. Usually pec minor is more guilty than pec major of holding the shoulder back, as well as coming on the lateral aspect of the scap. So I might just block that lateral aspect of the scap, move the arm slowly into more elevation. I might add some deep pressure on the teres major that somebody here on the mat doesn't like very much. Or is ticklish. So the teres major is also another famous muscle for holding the shoulder back from tolerating passive stretch. So you work into that range, you say, okay, we're going to sit and simmer here. Stretches like to be held for approximately 2 to 6 minutes. Research has shown that that is the perfect period of time for tissue to benefit from a stretch. If it's less than 2 minutes, you've not gone long enough. If it's more than 6 minutes, you're wasting your time. Understand that the stretch does not have to be a consecutive 2 minutes. So you could stretch for about 30 seconds, take a break, do another 30 seconds. These are rough estimates. You don't have to have a timer hanging over your head, right? Just understand that you can't just visit a stretch for 10 seconds and call it a day. So I would sit in my new range, tolerate a prolonged stretch, hopefully, and then slowly take the patient out. When I take the patient's arm back down to their side, I'm going to think about shortening the lever arm. Often the bicep tendon is also something that will impede comfort in retrieving an arm from stretching in a point where it doesn't often get stretched. So I shorten the lever arm, comfortably put the arm at the side. Look, all nice and cozy. And now she's happy.
Okay, in one of the videos, you're going to see passive stretch, which is basically using an external force, which in the example will be a ball. And so the joint moves without a muscle contraction because I was using my left hand to move the ball to get a stretch of my shoulder. This is active stretch, which is basically what it sounds like. I'll be moving my arm to be able to stretch it. So what's nice with this golf club is that it becomes closed chain, so I'm able to have more stability. So what I'm going to do for this active stretch golf club shoulder activity is, number one, think about good body mechanics and neuromuscular reeducation. So I'm going to squeeze my shoulder blades for this retraction and downward rotation, and then I'm going to come straight up, really focusing on squeezing my shoulder blades, because that is what I want to stabilize when I actively stretch. And now I'm going to take the golf club for an active stretch for my shoulder and just come and shoulder flex as much as I can, keeping that scapula pinched, and then come back up again. So with the active stretch, there is actual muscle contraction while I'm trying to stretch my shoulder.